$3, the cattle buyer snapped, slamming his palm on the Prairie Star counter. You shorted me $3. Rose Mitchell didn't apologize. She reached for the ledger just as the man swept it onto the dusty floor. Across the crowded dining room, a chair scraped back. Adam Fletcher, the biggest rancher in Cedar Ridge, rose to his full height, and every conversation stopped. But instead of reaching for the man, Adam bent down, picked up Rose's ledger, brushed the dust from its cover, and placed it carefully back in her hands. Let her finish. Neither of them knew that before long, those missing dollars would lead to a marriage proposal, and a question Rose refused to answer cheaply. Rose opened the ledger while cattle buyers watched over tin coffee cups and half-finished plates. $3 meant days of wages, but her finger never shook as she traced the charges. Then she found it. A stable fee entered twice beneath the buyer's own signature. Adam said nothing. He simply waited while Rose proved herself. And when the room finally went quiet, she noticed something strange in the way the wealthy cowboy looked at her. Not pity, not rescue, but recognition. The real question was why a man like Adam Fletcher would soon need a woman with Rose's particular eye for numbers. If you were Rose, would you trust where that question might lead? You owe me $3. Harvey Sloan said it loudly enough to stop 3 conversations at once. Rose Mitchell still had the coffee pot in her right hand. Around her, the Prairie Star Hotel dining room carried on for another second. The scrape of a boot, a fork striking a plate, somebody arguing over the price of yearling steers. Then the sounds thinned away. Sloan pushed his chair back. I gave you a $10 bill, yes sir. And you brought me $4 and some change. Rose set the coffee pot down. I brought you $7.20. Sloan gave a short laugh. No, you didn't. It was near noon, and every table facing the Santa Rosa Wagon Road was occupied. Cattle buyers sat beside freight men with trail dust on their coats. Saddles and bedrolls were stacked near the front wall. Through the windows, a dry April wind pushed pale New Mexico dust against the glass. Rose could feel every eye in the room. She reached into the pocket of her apron. The coins there were not hers. Her own money was kept in a little cloth bag beneath the counter. Pennies, nickels, an occasional dime. Tips saved one at a time toward a room she did not yet own, with tables she had not bought, and a freight desk that existed nowhere except in her head. $3 was not a small accusation. It was several days of wages. Edith Lawson appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. At 56, Edith had spent enough years running the Prairie Star to know when trouble might cost more than the meal that caused it. She looked at Sloan, then Rose. Check it again. That was all. Rose nodded. She went behind the counter and pulled out the dining ledger. Sloan followed. I don't need you hiding behind a book. I'm not hiding. Rose opened to the day's page. Her finger moved down the entries. Breakfast, 40 cents. Dinner, 60. Coffee included. Stable grain and one night's stall. I know what I bought. Then this shouldn't take long. Someone coughed. At a table near the back, a very large man stopped cutting his beef. Adam Fletcher had entered quietly 20 minutes earlier, but quiet did not make him easy to miss. He was 40 years old and stood close to 6'7". His shoulders had been built by years of cattle work rather than any wish to impress a room. His brown coat hung over the back of his chair. One sleeve of his faded shirt was rolled higher than the other, exposing an old pale scar along his forearm. People in Cedar Ridge called him Big Adam. They also remembered a fight from years before more clearly than Adam seemed to. When he walked through a doorway, men tended to move first and decide why afterward. Adam said nothing. Rose continued down the ledger. Mr. Sloan, you signed for your stall yourself. Sloan leaned over. Then his face changed, only slightly. Rose saw it. The stable has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with it. You paid $10 at the desk. Mr. Carter charged $2.80 against your room and stable account. I received the remaining $7.20 to settle your meals and return the balance. Sloane's jaw tightened. You expect me to believe I counted $3 wrong? No, Rose turned the ledger around. I expect you to read your signature. A few men looked down at their plates. Sloane did not. Instead, he snatched the ledger from the counter. Don't get clever with me. The book struck the floor. A chair scraped hard behind him. Every head turned. Adam Fletcher was standing. For an instant, Sloane looked as though he regretted having hands. Adam crossed the room. Slowly, there was no hurry in him. That somehow made the silence heavier. He stopped several feet from Sloane. Then he bent down. He picked up the ledger. Dust had caught along the leather binding. Adam brushed it away with the flat of his hand and placed the book on the counter in front of Rose. He looked at Sloane. Did she count wrong? Sloane said nothing. Adam waited. His hands remained loose at his sides. Did she? No. Adam gave one small nod, then let her finish. That was all. No threat, no raised voice. Sloane looked around the dining room and seemed to realize there was no version of the moment that improved by staying. He took his hat and left. The door slammed behind him. For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then somebody at the far table asked for more potatoes. The Prairie Star began breathing again. Rose closed the ledger. Mr. Fletcher, Adam had already turned away. Thank you. He glanced back. You had the book. Then he returned to his meal. Rose watched him sit down. She had expected a man that size to enjoy being the strongest person in the room. Adam Fletcher seemed more interested in finishing his beef before it went cold. That interested her. Near 2 o'clock, Adam paid and walked outside. Rose cleared his table. Under the edge of his plate were 2 silver dollars. She frowned. His meal had already been paid at the counter. She grabbed the coins and hurried through the front door. Mr. Fletcher. Adam was at the hitching rail tightening the girth on a tall bay gelding. He turned. Rose held out the money. You paid too much. Adam looked at the coins, then at her. You sure? Rose was still breathing a little hard from running. I'm always sure before I chase a man into the street. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a grin. Close, he took the coins. That's probably a useful habit, so is counting, I've heard. This time she knew he was teasing her. Only a little. Adam mounted and rode toward the northern end of town. Rose remained beside the hitching rail until Edith called her back inside. 3 mornings later, Adam returned. Rose noticed because he ordered eggs instead of beef. Then she decided she was foolish for noticing. The dining room was quiet after breakfast. Edith had left a flour invoice beside the register, and Rose was checking it while coffee warmed on the stove. She ran her finger down the page, stopped, went back. Mrs. Lawson? Edith looked up. They charged you twice. For what? Tuesday's flour delivery. Edith came over. Rose pointed. Same wagon number. 37, 6 sacks on the 9th and 6 more on the 12th. We got deliveries both days. Not from wagon 37. Edith stared at the paper. From the corner table came Adam's voice. How do you know? Rose looked over. Because a wagon can't be unloading here on the 12th when Mr. Dunn had its rear axle apart at the smithy. Adam lowered his coffee cup. You remember the wagon number from the blacksmith? I remember numbers. He studied her for a moment, then reached inside his coat. A folded paper appeared on the table. Come here. Rose did not move. Why? I want you to look at something. Then you can bring it here. Adam looked at her. Rose looked back. A moment later, he stood, carried the paper to the counter, and laid it in front of her. Fair enough. It was a cattle feed statement from a merchant in Las Vegas. Rose read it once, then again. Her finger stopped halfway down. Same wagon, Adam's expression sharpened. Where? She pointed. Delivery on the 6th, again on the 9th. Wagon 84. That could be 2 trips. It could. She moved her finger to the freight notation. But the first entry says the wagon left for Mora after delivery. That's not a 3-day turn in bad spring roads with a loaded freight team. Adam said nothing. Rose looked at him. You knew something was wrong. I knew feed was costing too much. And your foreman, George Webb, says prices went up. They did. So a higher price doesn't explain a wagon being in 2 places. Adam folded the statement. How much do they pay you here? Rose's eyes narrowed. That's a personal question. Then don't answer it. He put on his hat. Would you work Sundays? Doing what? Finding out where my money's going. Rose almost laughed. You always hire waitresses to keep ranch books? Adam opened the door. Only the ones who can find money disappearing faster than my foreman can. The following Sunday, Rose began. Adam brought records into town rather than asking her to ride alone to Fletcher Ranch. They worked in a small back room behind a feed store where sacks of oats muffled the noise from the street. The first week, Rose found 2 cattle deaths entered twice. The second, she found hay charges that had climbed without matching increases in tonnage. Then came repair bills from Clearwater Ditch. 3 payments, same month, different amounts. 2 carried initials Rose did not recognize. Adam stood behind her chair. George? Rose closed the ledger. I didn't say that. He signs most ranch expenses. A wrong number isn't the same thing as a dishonest man. Adam's face gave away nothing. Rose pushed the book toward him. If you accuse someone before you know what happened, he'll spend his time defending himself instead of helping you find the mistake. Adam considered that. You always this careful with other people's reputations? Rose looked down at the ledger. I know what one accusation can cost. He did not ask what she meant. The Sundays continued, and people noticed. A merchant began refusing to leave invoices where Rose could see them. A pair of cattle buyers stopped talking when she approached their table. Then Edith moved Rose from the noon shift to evenings. Evening meant fewer customers. Fewer customers meant fewer tips. Rose understood without being told. On the second Friday in May, she counted the money in the cloth bag beneath her bed. $28.65, not enough for her supper room. Enough, perhaps, to reach Las Vegas and find work. She folded 2 dresses into a small trunk, added her father's old notebook, a spare apron, a comb, 3 pencils tied with string. Then someone knocked on the back door of the hotel. Rose opened it. Adam Fletcher stood beneath the narrow awning. His hat was wet from a brief evening shower. His eyes moved past her to the open trunk. Where are you going? Las Vegas, maybe. Why? Rose fastened one trunk strap. Wherever my work costs more than my reputation. Adam's jaw shifted. Walter told me they changed your hours. Walter talks too much. He's a blacksmith. Talking is cheaper than coal. Despite herself, Rose almost smiled. Adam looked at the trunk again. Come to Fletcher Ranch. Her expression hardened. As what? You'd have a room, I asked. As what? You could keep the books and cook, wash, clean up after 20 ranch hands? No, Rose folded her arms. I've already got one job men don't respect. I don't need another. Adam went still. Rain tapped against the tin gutter above them. He could have offered her money. Rose knew he had plenty. He could have doubled her wages and called himself generous. Instead, Adam removed his hat. I'm not offering you another job. Rose waited. The alley smelled of wet dust and wood smoke. Somewhere beyond the hotel, a freight wagon rolled over the muddy road. Adam looked directly at her. Marry me. Rose did not move. For several seconds, she thought she had misunderstood him. You're asking me to marry you? Yes. Why? Adam took his time answering. Fletcher Ranch is heading into a difficult year. I've got water expenses I don't understand, feed accounts I don't trust, and people waiting for me to make an expensive mistake. That explains why you need a bookkeeper. It explains why I need somebody whose judgment I trust. Rose's face changed. Adam continued. You want control over where your life goes. I have a house, land, and a legal name that carries weight in this valley. You have a better head for certain things than anyone I've paid to handle them. Rose stared at him. There was no romance in the offer, no practiced tenderness, no promise that love would somehow solve what money and reputation had broken. It was almost painfully practical. You don't love me. Adam did not insult her by pretending. No. Rose looked away. Rainwater fell from the roof in slow drops. And you think that's a good beginning for marriage? I think a lie would be worse. She looked back at him. Adam stood there with his hat in his hands, too large for the narrow doorway, waiting without trying to fill the silence. Rose thought about her $28.65, about the room behind the kitchen, about the desk she wanted someday, about the ranch books Adam had placed in front of her without once asking whether a woman ought to understand them. Then she thought about the word wife, not servant, not employee, not charity. Wife. Still, Rose Mitchell had spent too many years counting pennies to accept an arrangement before she knew its price. She closed the trunk. Adam watched her. Rose stepped closer. And what exactly do I get besides your name? Adam Fletcher did not answer at once. Rain ticked against the narrow awning behind the Prairie Star Hotel. Somewhere beyond the alley, a wagon wheel struck a rut, and a mule driver cursed under his breath. Rose stood with one hand resting on the lid of her half-packed trunk, waiting. Adam looked at her the way he looked at a difficult piece of ground before deciding where to put a fence. Security, he said. Rose's expression did not change. A room at Fletcher Ranch, food, a legal share in whatever comes with being my wife. That sounds like what you get. His brow tightened slightly. Rose continued. You get someone to keep your books, someone whose judgment you say you trust, someone living under your roof while half the valley waits to see if she knows her place. Adam lowered his eyes for a moment. That fair? It's accurate. He nodded once. Then tell me what would make it fair. Rose had expected resistance. The absence of it made her more cautious. She closed the back door against the rain and carried the lamp to the little table beside her bed. Adam ducked under the low frame and stepped inside. The room was barely large enough for the trunk, a washstand, one chair, and the narrow bed pushed against the wall. He did not sit until Rose did. Then he took the chair opposite her. Rose folded her hands. If I marry you, I'm not becoming your house servant. You won't. I keep the ranch accounts, if you want them. I do. Adam nodded. The money I already have stays mine. Of course. Rose leaned forward. Don't say of course, like I'm asking something foolish. Say you understand. Adam's eyes stayed on hers. I understand, she went on. I keep saving for my own business. His gaze shifted briefly toward the trunk, where her little cloth money bag was hidden. What kind? A supper room. Maybe a freight desk, too. Somewhere near the wagon road where teamsters can eat, leave bills, send messages, maybe get help reading an invoice before somebody cheats them. Adam considered it. Town or crossroads? Rose stopped. That matters to you? If you're planning to build something, location matters. A small line appeared between her brows. Crossroads, maybe. Then keep saving. She watched him more carefully now. We sleep in separate rooms. Adam did not react. Until we both decide otherwise, Rose added. All right. And you don't decide things for me because you think you're protecting me. This time Adam did move. He leaned back. That one may be harder. Rose almost smiled. Then that one matters most. He rubbed a thumb along the brim of his hat. I can agree to try. That isn't the same as agreeing. No. His eyes lifted again. It's more honest. Rose sat back. For a while, neither spoke. The rain softened. Adam finally asked, "Anything else?" Rose tilted her head. "You're not offended. I'd be more worried if you hadn't thought about it." That answer settled somewhere deeper than she wanted it to. She looked down at her hands. The nails were short from kitchen work. A faint burn mark crossed one wrist from a coffee pot she had dropped 2 winters earlier. Adam waited. No pressure, no promise, no attempt to charm her. Rose had known men who wanted obedience and called it protection. Others wanted gratitude and called it kindness. Adam seemed to want an agreement. That was different, not safe, but different. She looked up. "All right." His face stayed still. "You mean that?" "Yes." Adam let out a breath through his nose. It was the first sign she had seen that he had not been as certain as he sounded. 3 days later, they stood inside Cedar Ridge Chapel beneath a plain wooden cross. There were no flowers except a jar of wild primrose Edith Lawson had brought from behind the hotel. Walter Dunn stood near the back in a clean shirt that looked uncomfortable on him. George Webb had ridden in from Fletcher Ranch wearing a black coat shiny at the elbows. Edith kept dabbing at one eye and pretending there was dust in it. The preacher spoke briefly. Adam wore a dark vest and a white shirt buttoned to the throat. Rose wore the best dress she owned, deep blue cotton with a narrow cream collar. When the time came, Adam took a small gold band from his pocket. Nothing ornate, no stone, just a smooth ring catching the chapel light. Rose held out her hand. His fingers were large enough to circle her wrist easily, but he handled the ring as though it might break. When it settled into place, Rose looked at it only once, then at him. Adam's eyes had gone softer, barely. The preacher placed the register on the table. Adam signed first. Rose took the pen. She wrote carefully. Rose Mitchell Fletcher. Her hand paused between the 2 surnames. Adam noticed. He said nothing. That helped more than anything he could have said. By noon, they were riding north toward Fletcher Ranch. The Santa Rosa wagon road stretched pale and hard beneath the May sun. Sage and bunchgrass rolled away toward the foothills, and the Sangre de Cristo peaks stood blue in the distance with late snow still caught in their high cuts. Rose rode a steady sorrel mare Adam had chosen from the ranch remuda. She kept one hand close to the saddle horn whenever the road dipped. Adam noticed that too. He did not mention it. The ranch appeared beyond a line of cottonwoods near Clearwater Ditch. The main house was 2 stories of adobe and timber, broad but plain. A long barn stood east of it. Corrals ran toward the south pasture, and beyond them cattle moved like dark marks across the grass. 3 ranch hands stopped working when Adam and Rose rode through the gate. Adam dismounted. Then he waited while Rose got down by herself. No hand at her waist. No show. He took her carpetbag. Inside the house, Rose expected the kitchen first. Adam walked past it. He opened another door. This is the office. Rose stepped in. A large desk sat beneath the west window. 2 ledgers were stacked beside an ink bottle. A wall map showed pasture divisions, ditch lines, and the route of Clearwater Spring down through Fletcher land. Adam crossed to a heavy iron safe in the corner. Deeds are in there. Payroll in the top drawer. Cattle books stay on the shelf. Water records are separate because George never puts anything back where it belongs. Rose looked around. "You're showing me the books before the pantry?" Adam glanced at her. "I figure you've seen flour before." She laughed before she could stop herself. Adam stared. Then a slow smile moved across his face. For the first time since she had known him, he looked younger than 40. Life at Fletcher Ranch settled into a rhythm neither of them had expected. Rose rose early because she always had. Adam rose earlier. Most mornings, she found coffee already warming on the stove. He drank his black. She added a little milk when there was any. They ate at opposite sides of the kitchen table at first. By June, they were sitting closer without discussing it. Work filled the spaces between them. One Tuesday, Rose found 27 cattle missing from George Webb's count. Adam stood over the ledger, jaw tight. "I'll get George." "Wait." Adam looked at her. 27 head. Don't disappear by arithmetic. Maybe not. Rose closed the book, but you'll know more after a recount. Adam did not like waiting. She could see it in the way his fingers tapped once against the desk. Still, he waited. By sunset, they learned 19 had been moved to the south pasture and never entered in the transfer book. 8 were truly missing. George stood in the yard with his hat crushed between his hands. "I should have caught it." Adam looked toward the pasture, then back at him, "Sir." George swallowed. Adam added, "Find the 8, that was all. No public dressing down, no threat." That night Rose asked, "You weren't angry?" "I was." "You didn't sound angry." Adam cut a piece of bread. "Sounding angry doesn't find cattle." Rose remembered that. Weeks later, part of Clearwater Ditch collapsed after a hard summer storm. Water tore through the bank and spread into a low field. Adam rode in at dawn covered in mud. "We'll pull 10 men off branding." Rose looked up from the kitchen table where cattle sale papers were spread beside her coffee. "You'll miss the buyer from Las Vegas. We lose the ditch, we lose more." She studied the repair estimate, then looked toward the road. "There are 6 ditch workers camped south of town." Adam frowned. "How do you know?" "They ate at the Prairie Star Monday. Said they were headed toward Taos." "You think they're still close?" "I think men traveling with picks, shovels, and 2 tired mules don't move quickly." Adam stared at her, then reached for his hat. By noon, the men were hired. Branding continued. The ditch held. After that, ranch hands began asking Rose directly about supply orders. Not every time. Enough. One afternoon, young Will Harris came in with dust on his face and fear in his eyes. 6 steers were missing. Adam crossed the yard toward him. Will looked as though he might prefer facing a rattlesnake. Rose watched from the porch. Adam stopped. "Did you lie about losing them?" "No, sir." "You hide anything?" "No." Adam pointed toward the north pasture. "Then quit standing here scared of me and go bring them home." Will stared, then ran for his horse. Rose watched Adam turn back toward the barn. He caught her looking. "What?" "Nothing." "That wasn't nothing." Rose leaned against the porch post. "I'm starting to think half your reputation belongs to other people." Adam considered that. "Only half?" By July, Rose bought a second-hand writing desk from a widow leaving Cedar Ridge. Adam helped carry it into the house. He set it down in the office. Rose shook her head. "Not there." "Where?" "Room." Adam looked at the desk. "You bought a desk to store it?" "For later." "Later what?" Rose ran her fingers over the worn oak top. "My supper room." Adam straightened. "Near the wagon road or in town?" She looked at him. He remembered. "Crossroads," she said quietly. Adam nodded. "More freight traffic." Rose did not answer. Something warm and dangerous moved between them. Not possession, not obligation. Possibility. Then Adam made the mistake she had warned him about. A week later, he was preparing to ride to the county office to review a grazing filing. Rose came downstairs wearing her riding skirt. Adam looked at her. "No." She stopped. "No what? You're not coming." "Why?" "Horse thieves have been working the north road." Rose's face closed. "I see. It's not safe." She removed her gloves, set them on the table. "Then be careful." That evening, Rose ate almost without speaking. Adam tried twice to start a conversation. Both attempts died. Finally, he put down his fork. "You're angry." Rose looked at him. "You agreed you wouldn't make my choices for me." "I agreed before I had something to lose." The words hung there. Rose set her fork down carefully. "Then you agreed only when it was easy." Adam said nothing. She stood and carried her plate to the wash basin. The next morning, Rose stepped onto the porch. 2 horses were saddled. Adam was tightening the cinch on her sorrel. He handed her the reins. "We're leaving at 7. Rose looked at him. No apology, but his face held one. She took the reins. On the ride home that afternoon, thunder rolled over the western ridge. Rain came fast. They reached an abandoned line shack just before the sky opened. The roof leaked in 2 places. Adam set a tin cup beneath one drip. Rose stood by the window, watching water hammer the dirt outside. After a long silence, she asked, "Why didn't you ever marry?" Adam leaned against the wall. "Never found a reason." "That sounds lonely." It was quiet. "That's not the same thing." He looked at her. Rose waited. Finally, Adam said, "Some women were afraid of me, and the others liked the ranch." Rose turned from the window. "And which do you think I care about?" Adam's eyes stayed on hers. "That's becoming a difficult question." "Why?" Rain struck the roof hard enough to fill the room with sound. Adam's voice came quieter. "Because I'm starting to hope it's me." Rose did not answer. Neither moved. The storm passed. They rode home, and the unfinished moment followed them for weeks. It ended beside an arroyo in August. A calf had slipped down a muddy bank after rain. Adam climbed in first. Rose followed with a rope. 20 minutes later, both of them were streaked with mud, the calf bawling safely above them. Adam pushed himself to his feet. Mud covered one side of his face. Rose looked at him, then laughed. Not politely, not softly. She laughed until she had to brace one hand on her knee. Adam stared. "What, you—" He looked down at himself. "That funny? Very." He stepped closer. Rose's laughter faded. The wind moved through the grass above the arroyo. Adam lifted one hand, stopped before touching her. Rose closed the last inch herself. Their first kiss was brief, warm, careful. When they pulled apart, Adam's forehead rested against hers for a moment. Neither apologized. That night, Rose carried the lamp from her room into his. By late summer, Fletcher Ranch had changed. So had they. Rose reorganized payroll and cut waste from supply orders. Adam began bringing contracts home before signing them. At supper, they talked through cattle prices, hay storage, winter pasture. He no longer introduced her as his wife, and then continued business without her. He simply said, "Rose handles the books." Sometimes men looked surprised. Adam let them. Then one hot afternoon in September, Victor Langley rode through the front gate. He came in a dark coat despite the heat, clean-shaven, with a leather document case tucked beneath one arm. Rose had seen him in town before. Everyone had. Langley owned hay sheds, held notes on small ranches, and seemed to know exactly who needed money before they asked. Adam met him in the office. Rose remained at the desk. Langley placed a filed survey copy between them. "I'm afraid there's a problem with Clearwater." Adam unfolded it. "What problem?" "The diversion line crosses acreage not legally included in Fletcher title." Adam's eyes hardened. "That ditch has been ours since my father dug it. Use isn't ownership." Langley tapped the paper. "If this filing stands, nearly half your present diversion falls under a separate claim." Rose leaned over the survey. The room seemed to narrow. There were measurements, old boundary notes, a faded certification, then a name near the bottom. "Assistant Clerk, Joseph Mitchell." Rose stopped breathing for 1 second. Adam saw her hand go still. "You know that name?" Rose looked at the paper, then at him. "He was my father." Adam looked back at the survey. Victor Langley did not move. The room felt suddenly smaller, though nothing in it had changed. Outside, a horse stamped near the hitch rail. Somewhere beyond the cottonwoods, water moved through the Clearwater ditch with a faint, steady sound. Rose touched the bottom edge of the filed copy. Joseph Mitchell. Langley folded his hands over the head of his cane. "Yes, you knew him? A long time ago." Adam looked at Langley. How long? Langley's eyes shifted toward him. 12 years, maybe 13. He worked with a survey crew that came through Cedar Ridge. Rose kept her hand on the paper. He was a camp clerk and a measurement recorder, Langley said. Rose looked at him sharply. Langley gave a small shrug. I remember things when they concern land. Adam's face stayed still. What happened to him? Langley answered Rose, not Adam. He was dismissed. For what? Errors in the field notes. Rose said nothing. Adam watched her. Langley gathered his document case. The filing speaks for itself. I thought it better you hear about it before the Water Association does. Adam stood. At 6'7", he made the doorway behind Langley look narrow. Langley did not retreat, but his hand tightened on the case handle. When does this become a problem? Adam asked. It already is. When? Within days, if the association reviews the claim. Adam stepped aside. Langley left. Only after the sound of his horse faded did Rose move. She went upstairs. Adam did not follow. 10 minutes later, she returned carrying a small leather notebook. The cover was cracked and darkened by years of handling. A piece of red thread had been tied through the spine to keep several loose pages in place. Rose laid it on the desk. My father kept this. Adam pulled out the chair across from her. Rose opened the notebook. There were distances, wagon numbers, sketches of fence lines, names, little marks beside dates. Camp, she said. Measurement recorder. Freight tallyman. Whatever work the crew needed that required a pencil. Adam turned one page carefully. He write all this? Yes. Why'd they dismiss him? Rose's jaw tightened. They said his measurements were wrong. Adam looked at her. Rose stared at the page. For years I thought maybe they were right. Adam waited. She gave a short breath. Maybe he did it, maybe. Rose looked up fast. The word struck harder than comfort would have. Adam held her gaze. Or maybe he didn't. She said nothing. We don't get to choose the truth because one version hurts less. Rose looked back down. The room stayed quiet. Then she pulled the filed survey toward her. Fine. Adam's brow lifted. Fine what? If we're not choosing, we check. That evening they covered the desk with paper. Fletcher deed. Langley's survey copy. Joseph's notebook. Old ditch repair receipts. Rose worked with a ruler and a length of string. Adam stood beside her, reading dates aloud. At first the numbers seemed close. Then Rose stopped. Again. Adam repeated the distance. Rose measured the same line in her father's notebook. She frowned. Again, Adam did. Rose sat back. That can't be right. What? Cottonwood marker to Clearwater Spring. She pointed to the filed survey. This says one distance, then the notebook. This says another. How much? Close to 200 yards. Adam leaned over the desk. That's not rounding. No. Could your father have measured from a different tree? Rose turned the notebook around. No. He drew the scar on the trunk. The sketch showed a cottonwood split at the base with a burned mark cut into one side. Adam stared at it. I know that tree. The next morning they rode north before sunrise. George Webb came with them. So did Will Harris, carrying a measuring chain over his shoulder. Mist lay low over the ditch bottom. The air smelled of damp earth and horse sweat. They found the old cottonwood near a bend, where the ground rose toward a rocky shoulder. The tree was still there, scarred, split near the roots, and on the west-facing bark, nearly hidden under new growth, was an old iron mark. Rose climbed down. She touched the mark with 2 fingers. Adam watched her. No one spoke. They stretched the chain. Once, then again. Will called the distance. Rose checked the notebook. Her mouth went dry. It matches. George looked toward Adam. Adam's face tightened. How close? Within a few feet. And the filed survey? Rose looked back toward that spring, nearly 200 yards off. The wind moved through the cottonwood leaves. Adam took off his hat. Not in celebration, in thought. If this line moved, he said, then every claim tied to it may be wrong. Rose looked at the valley below. That's more than our water. Yes. By the end of the week, Langley began tightening the rope. The feed merchant in town refused Adam another 30 days of credit. A cattle buyer from Las Vegas delayed payment on a spring contract. The Clearwater Water Association sent notice that Fletcher diversion would be reduced until the claim was reviewed. Then came another letter, an old promissory note on ranch equipment. Due early, Adam read it twice. Rose stood at the office window. That one too, he handed it over. Same law office that represented one of Langley's companies. Rose felt something cold settle in her stomach. He's buying pressure. Adam looked at her. Looks that way. And the hay? 2 suppliers sold out yesterday. To who? Adam did not answer. He did not need to. That evening, George Webb sat alone in the tack room. He held a folded note in both hands. His late wife's name was still visible on the medical receipt tucked inside. 2 winters earlier, before she died, George had borrowed more than he could repay. Langley held the note. The message beneath it was short: cattle sale dates, hay inventory, travel plans, copies only. George closed his eyes, then put the paper in his coat. 3 days later, Adam found a ranch record missing from the office. He checked the shelf twice, then the safe. Nothing. Was nowhere near the house. Adam walked into the kitchen holding an empty file folder. Rose looked up from a freight bill. What happened? This was full yesterday. What was in it? Cattle sale dates. Hay contracts. Rose stood. Who had access? Me. You. George. Adam's voice had gone flat. Rose knew that tone. It was quieter than anger and more dangerous. You don't know it was George. No. No, he's been avoiding me. That isn't proof. Adam dropped the folder on the table. And if I keep waiting for proof, we may not have a ranch left to prove anything on. The words hit the room hard. Rose's face changed, then lock everybody out. Adam stared at her. Maybe I should. She pushed back her chair. If you make everyone here afraid to tell you the truth, you'll never know which man lied. Adam's jaw worked. Rose waited. He said nothing. She went upstairs. They did not speak again that night. At dawn, Rose entered the office. Adam was already there. He stood by the safe. In his palm was the iron key. He held it out. You keep the originals. Rose looked at the key, then at him. No apology, no excuse. His eyes looked tired. Rose took it. All right, that was enough. Later that week, Walter Dunn asked Rose to stop by the smithy. The shop smelled of coal smoke, oil, and hot iron. Walter was fitting a shoe when she arrived. You asked about Joseph Mitchell. Rose turned. Walter set the hammer down. I knew him. Her hand tightened around the strap of her satchel. How well enough to remember he hated weak coffee. Rose almost smiled. Walter wiped his hands on his apron. Survey crew came through one summer. 4 horses, 2 mules. Stayed near the creek. You remember Langley? Walter's face hardened. Younger then. Cleaner boots. What happened? I heard arguing behind the shop. About what? Couldn't tell you exactly. Walter looked toward the open door. But your father said one thing I never forgot. Rose waited. Walter's voice dropped. They moved something that wasn't theirs to move. That night, Rose opened Joseph's notebook again. Near one margin, beside a line of measurements, were 2 initials, A.G. She showed Adam. County records gave them the name Arthur Givens, former surveyor, still alive, living north of the mountains near a small settlement beyond the pass. The final hearing was less than 2 weeks away. Adam folded the record. I'll go. Rose looked at him. We'll go. No. Her face closed. Adam, snow's already coming early, so the pass is bad. You promised. I know what I promised. Then keep it. Adam turned away. Rose stepped in front of him. You're not afraid of the mountain. His eyes met hers. I know, she waited. You're afraid of coming back without me. Adam looked past her toward the window. For once, he had no answer. The next morning, they rode together. They reached the county seat after dark the second day. Rose stayed to copy documents, prepare the petition, and guard the originals. Adam would ride north alone. It was faster. Givens might refuse to travel. They had little time. Before sunrise, Adam tightened the saddle on his bay. Rose stood beside him in a wool coat. If the weather turns, he said, I come back. Rose looked toward the mountains. Don't promise what the mountain decides. Adam gave a tired smile. Then I'll promise to try. He touched the brim of his hat, then rode north. 3 days passed. On the 4th, Rose heard a horse in the street. She ran outside. It was Adam's bay, but Adam was not in the saddle. A rider from the northern road held the reins. The saddle leather was torn. One stirrup was gone. There was dried blood on the blanket. Rose stopped. The rider removed his hat. Bridge washed out above the pass. Her eyes stayed on the horse. We found him wandering below the road. And Adam? The rider looked down. No sign. Rose did not speak. That evening she returned to Fletcher Ranch with the horse. Inside the stable, the bay reached toward her and pressed its muzzle against her shoulder. Rose stood still. Then she removed the damaged saddle, carried it inside. George Webb watched from the doorway. Rose set the saddle across a rail. Her hands were steady. How many days until the hearing? George Webb looked toward the stable door. Rose nodded. The bay shifted behind her, restless from the road. 6 days, no body, no grave, no certainty. Only Adam's torn saddle on the rail and dried blood on the blanket. That was worse than mourning. Mourning had an answer. This did not. By the next morning, everyone at Fletcher Ranch knew Adam was missing. Nobody said dead, not at first. Rose refused the word whenever someone reached for it. She slept little, ate because George put food in front of her, rode the north pasture because cattle still needed counting, whether Adam came home or not. Every time hoofbeats sounded beyond the gate, her head turned. Every time it was someone else. On the second day, Victor Langley arrived. He came alone, no attorney, no deputy, no show of force. Rose was in the ranch office with 3 ledgers open and a coffee cup gone cold beside her. Langley removed his gloves. I heard about Adam. Rose did not look up. You heard he's missing. Langley placed a folded agreement on the desk. I came because waiting can become expensive. That got her attention. He pushed the paper toward her. I can clear the feed balance, release the equipment lien, guarantee you the house and a few hundred acres around it. Rose unfolded the agreement. Her eyes moved down the page. And in return, Clearwater water rights, southern pasture, the disputed acreage. Rose looked up. Langley's face was calm, reasonable almost. A widow doesn't need 9,000 acres. Rose folded the paper again. I'm not a widow. Langley held her gaze. Then perhaps you'll be one by winter. The room went still. Rose slid the agreement back across the desk. No doubt Langley's mouth tightened. Think before you answer. I did. He stood. You may feel differently when the cattle begin losing weight. Rose said nothing. Langley put on his gloves and left. The door closed softly behind him. For a while, Rose sat without moving. Then she reached for the winter hay ledger. By afternoon, she had made a list. 14 breeding horses, Adam's best line. Red Jack. Bell. 2 young mares he had once spent an entire supper telling her were worth keeping, even if every fool in the territory said otherwise. George stared at the list. You sure? Rose looked at the figures. No, George waited. Load them anyway. The horse buyer from Las Vegas came 2 days later. Rose watched Red Jack lead down the road. He kept turning his head toward the ranch, her fingers curled around the porch rail. George stood beside her. You don't have to watch. Yes, I do. The sale brought enough to buy winter hay from a ranch south of Santa Rosa, more than 2 days by freight wagon. Rose cut the temporary hands next, then delayed a new plow, then canceled a tool order. But she kept the breeding cows, kept the workhorses, kept wages for the families who lived on Fletcher land. That part George noticed. So did everyone else. A ranch wife from 3 miles west rode over one morning asking where Rose had found hay. A teamster offered to haul part of it below his usual rate. Adam pulled my wagon out of a wash 2 winters ago, he said. Walter Dunn repaired a cracked wagon wheel and waved away the account book. Put it down later. Rose did. She kept every debt, every favor, every promise. Nothing disappeared because people were kind. Then the county notice came. Temporary control of the disputed Watergate would go to Langley until the final hearing. Rose read the notice twice. At noon, she rode to Clearwater Ditch. The flow had already dropped. Water still moved, but thinner now, no longer filling the cut bank from edge to edge. By late afternoon, patches of mud along the lower field began to dry. A cow stood in the ditch, licking at the dark ground where water had been. Rose dismounted. She walked down the bank, the earth cracked beneath her boot. She pulled off one glove, pressed her palm to the mud. Still cool. Not for long. She stayed there until the sun lowered behind the foothills. That night, the ranch office felt too large. Adam's chair stood across from her, empty. Rose put the safe key on the desk. Beside it sat the second-hand writing desk she had bought for her own future business. For the first time, she wondered if Victor Langley's offer was not surrender. Maybe it was survival, the house, a few 100 acres, enough to live, enough to start again. If Adam returned, that thought stopped her. If Adam returned. Rose closed her eyes. She could see him standing in the empty breeding corral, looking at the horses she had sold. Looking at the ditch she had lost. Looking at a ranch smaller than the one he had left. Something inside her tightened. Not because he would blame her, because she was afraid he might not. She opened her eyes. The truth came quietly. She still thought of Fletcher Ranch as his cattle, his water, his land, his loss, even after he had handed her the safe key, even after he had trusted her judgment, even after he had put her at the same table with buyers and ranch hands. Rose reached for her father's notebook. She had been reading it like an accountant. Distances, dates, numbers. Tonight she read it like a daughter. The handwriting changed near the middle, smaller, more hurried. One margin note beside the cottonwood measurement made her stop. Stake 14 moved after dark. Rose leaned closer. The ink was faded. She turned the page. Vielle says sign or leave. Her breath caught. She turned another. At the bottom, Givens refused final copy. Mine taken. Rose sat back. For several seconds there was no sound except the faint ticking of the stove. Vielle Victor Langley. She read the lines again, then once more. Her father had not written like a man hiding an error. He had written like a man recording a fight he expected to lose. Rose put 2 fingers on Joseph's name. 12 years of shame sat inside that one page. All the times people stopped trusting him. All the work he could no longer get. All the evenings he had sat at the table with bills stacked beside him. Rose had thought he had failed. Maybe he had refused. That was different. Her eyes burned, but she did not wipe them. She stayed there until the stove clicked and settled. Then she pulled a clean sheet toward her, dipped the pen, wrote across the top, Clearwater claim, original measurements. By dawn, the office had changed. Not physically, but Rose had. She rode into Cedar Ridge before breakfast. Walter Dunn found her at the smithy while he was still banking the coals. I need every old shoeing record you kept from that survey summer. Walter stared at her. You think I still have them? You keep nails older than Will Harris. That's because nails don't complain. He found the records. 4 horses, 2 mules, August 3rd. Rose copied everything. Next came the freight office. An old invoice showed the survey crew's wagon leaving Cedar Ridge on August 11th. Rose checked the filed survey, field certification dated August 13th. She stopped. That was impossible. Not if the crew had already left. By noon, she had the county filing date. By evening, an old tax map. Then Walter rode with her to the cottonwood marker and confirmed he had known the tree before the dispute. The case began to take shape. Not one perfect piece, many small ones. That night, George Webb appeared in the office doorway. He looked older than 47. Rose kept writing. What? George stepped inside. He placed an envelope on the desk. Rose looked at it. Inside were copies of cattle sale dates, hay inventories, 2 notes in Langley's hand. Rose raised her eyes. George could not hold them. My wife was sick 2 winters ago. Rose waited. I borrowed money. How much? More than I had any business borrowing. From Langley. George nodded. He said if I gave him copies, just copies, he'd leave the house alone. Rose looked through the papers. You gave him Adam's travel plans. Yes. Her hand stopped. George swallowed. I didn't know about the bridge. I didn't know any of that would happen. Rose's face hardened. Did you change the survey? No. Did you steal my father's notebook? No. Did you alter any original ranch record? No. Rose pointed to the chair. Then sit down. George looked confused. You're going to tell me every paper you gave him. You're not firing me? I didn't say that. George sat. Evidence first. Rose pulled a clean page toward him. Judgment after. Something in George's face broke. Not relief, shame. He started talking. Near sunset the next day, a freight rider came hard through the gate. Rose was in the yard counting hay bales. He called her name before dismounting. Mrs. Fletcher. Rose crossed the yard. I've got a letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The signature at the bottom was not. Arthur Givens. Rose opened it where she stood. The first line made her knees weaken. Adam Fletcher reached me alive. She sat down on the edge of the wagon. The rider removed his hat. Rose kept reading. Adam had found Givens. On the return trail, the bridge gave way under floodwater and snowmelt. A line crew had found him downstream. Broken ribs, badly injured leg, fever for 2 days, alive. Rose pressed the paper flat against her knee. Alive, read the word without seeing it written. After a while, she looked up. When can he ride? The rider's face answered first. He can't. Rose's fingers tightened around the letter. Snow closed the pass yesterday. For how long? Could be days. The hearing was tomorrow morning. Rose looked toward the north road. For one wild second, she wanted to leave everything, ride until the horse dropped. Find Adam, touch his face, hear him say her name. Then she looked back at the ranch office, at the ledgers, at the hay wagons, at the thin line of water beyond the cottonwoods. If she left, Langley would walk into that county room unopposed. Rose folded the letter. Walter had come up beside her. She handed it to him. Put it in my coat. He did. Rose turned toward the office. We're not done. Before sunrise the next morning, Cedar Ridge was silver with frost. Rose wore her dark blue dress beneath a wool coat. She carried Joseph's notebook, the filed survey copy, the horseshoe record, the freight invoice, the tax map, and George's envelope in a leather satchel. The county room was already half full. Victor Langley sat near the front beside his attorney. A clerk arranged papers at a narrow table. Deputy Nathan Doyle stood by the wall. Rose walked to the opposite side. There were 2 chairs. She sat in one. The other remained empty. The clerk glanced at it, expecting someone. Rose placed her father's notebook on the table. Yes. She did not move the chair. The clerk looked at the empty place beside Rose, then at the papers arranged in front of her. Across the room, Victor Langley whispered something to his attorney. The county magistrate entered through a side door carrying a narrow stack of filings beneath one arm. He was an older man with wire spectacles and a stiff black coat polished shiny at the cuffs from years of wear. Everyone stood, then sat. There was no jury box, no polished courtroom. Just a long county table, a wood stove, 2 tall windows facing the street, and ranchers packed along the back wall, because the ownership of Clearwater could affect more than Fletcher land. Deputy Nathan Doyle remained near the door. The magistrate adjusted his spectacles. This hearing concerns the disputed diversion from Clearwater Spring and the boundary filing attached to the Langley claim. He looked toward Rose. Mrs. Fletcher, is your husband present? Rose glanced once at the empty chair. No, sir. Langley's attorney rose. Then perhaps this matter should be delayed. Rose looked at him. The attorney continued. Mr. Fletcher is the principal owner. Rose opened the ranch deed. I am his lawful wife and authorized keeper of the ranch records. The magistrate held out his hand. Rose gave the deed to the clerk. The clerk checked the names and nodded. The magistrate looked at Langley's attorney. We proceed. Rose set both hands on the table. That steadied them. The attorney began with Joseph Mitchell. Your father was employed by the original survey crew? Yes. And dismissed? Yes. For inaccurate measurements? That was the accusation. Was his notebook ever filed with the county? No. Certified? No. Witnessed? Not that I know. The attorney glanced toward Langley. And if this claim is rejected, you and your husband retain valuable water rights. Yes. So you have a financial interest in proving your father's private notes are correct. Rose did not look away. Yes. A murmur passed through the room. The attorney seemed almost disappointed by how easily she admitted it. So why should this county trust an unofficial notebook kept by a dismissed clerk? Rose rested her fingertips on the worn leather cover. It shouldn't. The room quieted. Langley looked at her. Rose opened a second paper. It should trust the dates. She slid the blacksmith record forward. August 3rd. 4 survey horses and 2 mules were shod at Walter Dunn's shop. Walter sat behind her. The magistrate looked at him. You kept this record? Yes, sir. Recognize it? Walter stood just enough to see. My hand has placed the freight invoice beside it. August 11th. The survey wagon left Cedar Ridge headed south. The clerk leaned over the paper. Rose waited until he finished reading. Then she placed Langley's filed survey on top. This certification says the field measurements were completed here on August 13th. The magistrate frowned. Langley's attorney stepped closer. A clerical date could be wrong. It could. Rose nodded. That's why there's more. She opened Joseph's notebook to the cottonwood page. My father recorded the distance from the marked cottonwood to Clearwater Spring. She gave the figure. Then she produced the county remeasurement from the previous morning. The tree is still standing. Same split trunk, same old iron mark. The magistrate compared the numbers. They match within a few feet. And the filed survey? Rose looked at Langley, nearly 200 yards different. The room stirred again. Langley leaned toward his attorney. The man raised a hand. A private notebook can be altered. Rose said nothing. The attorney continued. Joseph Mitchell was dismissed. He had reason to resent the survey company. He could have written those measurements later. That landed. Rose knew it would. The magistrate looked down at the papers. Langley finally spoke. Exactly. His voice was calm. Mrs. Fletcher has built an impressive story from family papers, but a story is not a filed claim. Rose felt the letter from Arthur Givens inside her coat. Adam was alive. Somewhere beyond the mountains. But not here. She looked at the empty chair beside her. Then at Joseph's notebook. Langley's attorney sat down. For one long moment, nobody spoke. A chair scraped behind Rose. George Webb stood. Adam's foreman looked pale. He removed his hat. Magistrate, the older man looked up. You have something to add? George swallowed. Yes, sir. He walked to front, carrying an envelope. Langley's expression changed for the first time that morning. Not much, enough. George placed the envelope on Rose's table. I gave Mr. Langley ranch records. The room erupted into whispers. The magistrate raised his hand. Quiet. George continued. Cattle sale dates, hay inventories, travel plans. Langley's attorney stood. On what authority? Sit down, the magistrate said. George stared at the floor. I owed Mr. Langley money. My wife was sick. He held the note. Rosa watched him. George's voice roughened. He said copies would be enough. Copies for what? The magistrate asked. I don't know all of it. George reached into the envelope, but I kept what he sent me. He laid down several folded notes. One was an instruction in Langley's handwriting. Rose had read it the night before. Now the clerk read it aloud. Locate any original Mitchell papers still at the ranch. Silence. Langley's attorney stood slowly. That proves nothing. Rose looked at Langley. It proves he knew the Mitchell papers mattered before I showed him the notebook. Langley's face hardened. The magistrate took the note. Mr. Langley? Langley stood. I knew the old survey had been disputed. By whom? Langley hesitated. That was when the door opened. Heavy bootsteps sounded in the hallway. One, then another, uneven. Every head turned. Adam Fletcher stood in the doorway. Rose forgot how to breathe. He was thinner. His beard had grown rough along his jaw. Dust marked the shoulders of his coat. One hand gripped a cane, and when he stepped inside, he favored his left leg badly enough that no one could mistake the injury for theater. Beside him stood an older man with white hair and a weathered face. Arthur Givens. Rose rose halfway. Adam saw her. Everything in his face changed. For 1 second, the county room disappeared. There was only Rose, only Adam, only the empty days between them. She took one step away from the table. Adam shook his head, small, almost invisible. His eyes moved to the papers, then back to her. Keep going. Rose stopped. The room seemed to hold its breath. Adam did not walk to the front. He took the empty chair beside her and lowered himself into it carefully. He said nothing else. Rose looked at him once, then turned back to the magistrate. Arthur Givens approached the table. My name is Arthur Givens. The magistrate removed his spectacles and wiped them. You were chief surveyor on the original Clearwater work? Yes. Did Joseph Mitchell work under you? He did. Were his measurements wrong? Givens looked at Rose. No. Langley's attorney rose again. Givens continued before he could speak. The original line ran from the marked cottonwood exactly as Mitchell recorded it. The magistrate pointed at the filed survey. And this? Givens looked at it for a long time. I refused to certify that version. Langley's face went still. Livens spoke slowly. One of the boundary stakes was moved after the field crew finished. Who ordered it? Givens glanced toward Langley. He was young then, working as a land agent for men trying to buy acreage along the waterline. Langley stood. This is memory from 12 years ago. Yes, Givens said, and I've spent 12 years wishing it wasn't. That silenced the room. Givens turned back to the magistrate. Mitchell objected. He was told to sign the altered measurements or leave. He refused. Rose pressed one hand against the table edge. Adam's hand rested near hers. Not touching. Close enough. Givens continued. I refused final certification too. Another copy was filed later. The magistrate looked at Langley. Were you involved in that filing? Langley did not answer. Deputy Doyle shifted near the wall. The magistrate gathered the papers into one stack. This hearing will not determine criminal responsibility. Langley exhaled. Too soon, the magistrate continued. But the present Clearwater claim cannot stand on a survey now contradicted by physical measurement, contemporary freight records, blacksmith records, an original field notebook, and testimony from the chief surveyor. Rose looked down. Adam did not move. The Langley claim is suspended pending territorial review. Temporary control of the disputed Watergate returns to Fletcher Ranch. A sound moved through the room, not cheering, something lower. Relief. The magistrate lifted George's papers. These records, along with the altered survey documents, will be forwarded for examination. He looked toward Deputy Doyle. Deputy, make sure Mr. Langley remains available for further questioning. Doyle nodded. Lang said nothing until they were outside. The sun had climbed high enough to melt the frost from the boardwalk. Ranchers gathered in small groups along the street. Rose stood beside Adam near the county steps. She wanted to touch him. She also wanted to ask 100 questions. She had time for none of them. Langley came through the door behind them. His composure was gone. Not completely. Enough. He looked at Rose. Quite a rise for a woman who was carrying coffee trays a few months ago. Adam turned. Rose saw several men step backward without thinking. Langley noticed, too. His chin lifted. You let a waitress run your ranch, Fletcher. Now she has half the valley questioning old claims because she found a family notebook. Adam stepped closer. He did not hurry. His cane struck the boardwalk once, then stopped. Langley's face tightened. Adam stood nearly a head taller. The old stories about Big Adam seemed to move through the crowd without anyone saying them aloud. Rose watched his right hand. It remained open. Adam looked at Langley. You spent 10 years hoping men would be too afraid or too indebted to tell the truth. A pause. I'm neither. Langley gave a bitter laugh. Going to hit me now? Adam looked at him for another second. No. He turned toward Deputy Doyle. He's yours. Doyle stepped forward. Adam walked away. Rose followed him around the side of the building where the crowd could no longer see. Then she stopped. Adam turned. For the first time since he entered the hearing room, neither of them had anything left to prove. Rose looked at the cane. You promised you'd try. Adam's mouth moved. I did a poor job of the coming back part. Rose hit him lightly in the chest. Adam winced. She stepped back immediately. Ribs, too, you idiot. Yes, Rose's eyes filled. Adam reached out with one arm and pulled her back. Carefully, she pressed her face against his coat. He smelled of cold air, horse, and road dust. Real alive. Adam rested his cheek against her hair. Neither spoke. A few days later, George Webb packed his belongings. Adam found him near the bunkhouse tying a bedroll. Where are you going? George did not turn. You know what I did. I do. George faced him. I expect you want me gone, and looked toward the corral. You give Rose every piece of correspondence you still have. George nodded. You repay what Langley paid you. Another nod. If you stay, 1 year. Reasonable deduction from wages. George stared. You're letting me stay? I'm letting you earn the answer. George lowered his eyes. I'll stay. Later that month, the county record received a narrow amendment. Nothing dramatic. One added line. Original field measurements consistent with Mitchell notebook. Rose read it at the clerk's desk. Her finger rested on Joseph Mitchell's name. For years she had carried his disgrace without knowing whether it belonged to him. Now the county gave back only one sentence. It was enough. She closed the record. Back at Fletcher Ranch, Adam walked slowly past the breeding corral. Stopped, looked again. Where's Red Jack? Rose kept walking. Sold. Adam turned. Bell, sold. How many? 14. His face changed. 14? We needed hay. You sold 14 breeding horses? Rose faced him. Yes. Adam looked through the rails at the empty space. Those horses had taken years to build into a line. Rose knew exactly what they meant to him. She did not apologize. You weren't here. The words came harder than she intended. Adam stayed quiet. For several seconds he watched the corral, then he looked at her. No. His voice was softer. You were. Rose's shoulders lowered. That was the end of the argument. 3 days later, Adam asked her to ride with him to Clearwater Spring. The snow had pulled back from the lower slopes. Water moved clear over stone. Adam still used the cane when the ground was uneven. Rose noticed he hated it. She did not offer to carry it. They stopped beneath the old cottonwood. Adam leaned against the trunk. Do you remember why you married me? Rose folded her arms. You had terrible books, Adam laughed. The sound startled a pair of birds from the grass. That was part of it, a considerable part. His smile faded. I offered you a ranch. Rose waited. A name. He looked toward the water, a place to stay, and a considerable amount of trouble. That too. Rose smiled. Adam did not. I don't want any of those things to be the reason you stay. She looked at him carefully. He continued. So imagine they're gone. The water ran between them and the pasture. No ranch. Rose said nothing. No cattle. He shifted his weight against the cane. No house. His eyes found hers. Nothing I can offer you. The wind moved through the cottonwood branches. Would you still marry me? Rose stared at him. You're already my husband. Adam shook his head. That's not what I asked. The first time he had proposed, he had stood behind the Prairie Star Hotel with practical reasons lined up like figures in a ledger. This time he had removed every one. Rose stepped closer. Then ask me without bargaining. Adam went still. Then he straightened as much as his injured leg allowed. Rose Mitchell, her eyes softened. Would you choose me? Rose reached for his hand. I already did. He kissed her, briefly, without urgency. When they parted, Rose stayed close enough that their shoulders touched. By early spring of 1890, Clearwater Ditch ran full again. Cattle returned to the lower pasture. Adam's limp remained on cold mornings, especially when frost settled hard over the yard. Rose still kept the Fletcher books, but she had not forgotten the second-hand writing desk. At a crossroads along the Santa Rosa Wagon Road, she bought a small building with a crooked porch and a roof that leaked near the stovepipe. She paid for it with money she had saved before marriage, bookkeeping wages, and her own share of ranch profit. The sign read, Mitchell Supper and Freight Room. Adam repaired the roof. Walter Dunn made the iron bracket for the sign. George Webb hauled lumber. Rose chose everything else. One afternoon, not long after opening, a freight wagon stopped outside. A stranger climbed down. Adam was on the porch tightening a loose board. The man looked at his size, then at the building. You own this place? Adam stopped working. Through the window, Rose sat behind the old writing desk. A ledger lay open before her. 2 ranchers waited while she calculated a freight rate. Adam watched her for a moment, then looked back at the stranger. She does. Inside, Rose heard him. She looked up. Their eyes met through the glass. Beyond the building, Clearwater moved through the cottonwoods, bright beneath the spring sun. The Santa Rosa Road stretched toward the mountains. Rose had once counted pennies behind a hotel counter, because every coin meant one step closer to a life she could call her own. Adam had spent years letting other people mistake his size for the measure of his strength. In the end, neither rescued the other. Rose taught Adam that love could not be built by making choices for someone, even when fear called it protection. Adam gave Rose something she had rarely been offered without conditions: room to choose, room to speak, and room to remain herself. And when the hardest days came, she proved that dignity was not something a husband, a ranch, or a county record could give her. It was already hers. Maybe that is why their second promise mattered more than their first. The first began with what two lonely people could offer each other. The second began when Adam imagined all of it gone, the cattle, the land, the house, the security, and asked the only question that remained. Would you still choose me? Sometimes the strongest love is not the one that holds on the tightest. It is the one that leaves the other person free to walk away, and becomes worth choosing anyway. So what do you think? Would you have made the same choice Rose did? If stories about hard roads, quiet courage, second chances, and love earned rather than promised mean something to you, subscribe and stay with us. There are more forgotten trails ahead, and more hearts waiting somewhere beyond the next ridge.